you probably shouldn't be dirty bulking and you should probably be doing something else instead. And in the past, I've definitely gone through dirty bulks. I know that when I went to college, my first semester, it was perfectly set up for me to totally put on way too much body fat, in which I just ended a kind of long-term fat loss phase in which I dieted from about 220 pounds and not a muscular 220 pounds down to about 155 pounds. And I ended that diet right before I went to college. And when I went to college, I was like, okay, eat big to get big. I'm just going to go through a aggressive massing phase. And I ended up putting on about 20 pounds in about 3 months. And unfortunately, I don't have a great documentation of this and photos and stuff, but it was an ugly 20 pounds. And it was really tough on me mentally because I just went from this guy that lost all this weight to this guy that seemingly just put on like 20 pounds of body fat and maybe just doesn't look great anymore. So I had identified as this lean fitness guy. And then now I just went through this kind of dirty bulk and it really didn't work for me. So instead of making this mistake like I did, what should you do instead? Well, let's first define what I'm talking about when I'm talking about dirty bulking. Dirty bulking is when you gain body weight in order to gain muscle, but you gain that body weight at a very fast rate. You're gaining a handful of pounds per month, several pounds per month. And the idea is that you just gain all of this weight and you trust that a portion of it is going to be muscle, and then in the future you can cut down. Now, what is wrong with this approach? Well, regardless of who you are, you can only build muscle at so fast of a rate in which it would be great if you gained 20 pounds of body weight in 3 months and half of that was muscle. But especially depending on someone's experience level and their own genetic propensity, some people might only have the machinery to build a couple pounds in a few months. And if you gain a total weight of 20 pounds, that could be like 15, 18 pounds of body fat. So the biggest problem with dirty bulking is you just gain weight faster than what is reasonably expected for muscle growth, resulting in just gaining a bunch of body fat. So what should you do instead? Well, it's probably a better idea to gain overall body weight at a rate that is more aligned with what you might expect for muscle growth. And I think that this changes throughout your training career, in which I think that when you're a beginner, I actually don't think you need to really worry about gaining or cutting phases. When you are a beginner and you're within your first year of proper training, I think the focus should be on having a solid training program, getting consistent in the gym, enjoying what you're doing in the gym, learning how to execute movements properly so you can appropriately stimulate the target muscle group, eating enough protein. And I think if you just do those things, you're going to have a great first year of training, and you really don't need to worry about these gaining and cutting phases. But then as you kind of enter those intermediate stages, then I think it makes more sense to actually enter these gaining and cutting phases. And the rationale for this is if you just focus on like gaintaining and just kind of maintaining body weight, there's a greater likelihood that you just spend a couple years spinning your wheels and not really getting anywhere. As if you don't gain any body weight, where do you expect that appreciable muscle growth to come from? Now, can you gain some muscle just roughly maintaining? Yeah, I think you can. But if you want to maximize results, I think gaining and cutting phases, especially once you enter those kind of intermediate stages beyond about a year of solid, consistent training, then I think this makes more sense. So when you're in those intermediate stages, what might be a good rate of gain? Well, a general rule of thumb that I like to go by is gaining about 1 to maybe 2% on the high side of your body weight per month. And I would say stick to that 1% body weight if you are a little bit more concerned about body fat gain and maybe you want to do whatever you can to keep that gaining phase a little bit more lean, or maybe you're entering the stages of maybe being more kind of intermediate advanced, maybe shoot for that 1% body weight per month. So for me, I weigh about 180 to 90 pounds. So if I want to gain about 1% body weight per month, I would gain roughly a couple pounds per month. And one thing that is crucial to remember here that I need to continuously tell my clients and remind my clients of is that in a gaining phase, I would love it if our weight just kind of stepped up week after week at half of a pound per week. So we hit that 2 pound per month target. But it almost never goes like that. It almost always goes like your weight will stick for 1 to 2 weeks and then it jumps by a pound or a pound and a half. And then it goes up by like a quarter of a pound and then it sticks and then it jumps by 2 pounds. And it is almost always a step process. So in a gaining phase, I think that it becomes more and more important to look at the monthly averages, how much you're gaining month over month, and adjusting your calories from there. And really not worrying too much about your weight of what it does over the course of a couple of weeks. And really look at multiple weeks to make those decisions on increasing or decreasing your calories. And alongside of this, if you're coming out of a cutting phase, I would completely disregard the first few weeks of a gaining phase, or disregard your weight the first few weeks of a gaining phase, as a lot of that weight that you gain is going to be non-tissue weight. It's going to be storing more glycogen. With glycogen, it binds to water, so you're storing more water. You're probably going to have more food just going through your digestive system. So all of those things add weight that aren't tissue. And I think that you can almost ignore the scale the first 2 or 3 weeks when you're transitioning from cutting to gaining. So if you are in those kind of intermediate stages, I would say 1 to 2% of your body weight gained per month, depending on how assertive you want to be with it and how kind of worried you are about body fat gain. Ignore the scale the first few weeks. Make sure that you're giving yourself 3 or 4 weeks of data before adjusting your calories and then coming to your calories to hit this about 1% body weight gain per month. I think a reasonable calorie surplus is somewhere around an estimated 200 to 300 calories per day. But then once you kind of estimate that, it really no longer matters. And what matters then is adjusting based on what your body weight is doing over multiple weeks and seeing, okay, compared to last month, I'm up 4 pounds. This is a little bit more quick than I wanted. Maybe you adjust your calories downward by 100 to 200 calories, and then vice versa. If after, a month, you're looking back and you're seeing, okay, my body weight, it really didn't change. It only changed by a quarter of a pound. At that point, I would bump those calories by 1 to 200 calories. And usually that can get things rolling again. And then if you're more advanced, I would actually potentially be a little bit more conservative with that rate of gain as well. And I might lean towards that 1% marker. Although, someone like Steve Hall, he still gains at a fairly assertive rate, as one argument for that is the more advanced you get, the more you might actually need to push that body weight to keep making muscle growth occur. So I think that 1 to 2% rate is actually pretty decent across the spectrum, except for that beginner training within your first several months of training. I would just focus on eating enough protein, having a quality training program, executing your exercises appropriately, figuring out how to kind of independently adjust your program based on principles. And I think that you're going to see great results. All right. So I think a much better approach compared to dirty bulking is taking a little bit more of a calculated approach in which your body weight gain reflects your ability to actually grow muscle at a certain rate. And I think 1 to 2% of your body weight per month is a very reasonable way to do that, in which, yes, you're still probably going to gain some body fat. That's going to come with the territory and gaining, but a very much larger ratio of that weight that you gain is probably going to be muscle compared to gaining body fat, which is going to result in having a lot less time spent dieting in the future because you just gained a bunch of needless body fat.